Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Syracuse Sport Business Conference Digital Series. My name is Jack Adler, and I'm the Chief of Operations here at SSBC, and I will be hosting today's episode. I'm thrilled to have on Mr. Adam Caplan as our first guest of the season. Adam is currently a host on SiriusXM NFL Radio and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, as well as a partner in the media company Inside the Birds. He also appears as a paid contributor on Sports Grid Radio and TV all year and is a paid contributor to the other sports radio networks, including Fox Sports Radio. Adam, welcome to the show and thank you so much for being here.
Jack, thank you, my friend. I'm glad to be with you and Syracuse students, and should be a fun hour or so. Just going back and forth about the sports media business, my career, your guys' career, and where this business is headed, which is certainly turbulent. We can certainly talk about that. It's certainly different from when I first started, but there are opportunities out there, folks, if you chase them. And understanding how to do it in network is something that we could certainly get into. I don't talk about networking very much, Jack, but it's absolutely positively the backbone of my career. And I know you are a networker as well, as I found out.
Yes, I am. And I mean, it's without further ado, let's get right into it. It took me long enough just to get through what you are doing currently. So I would love to hear, just to start off, the path that took you to where you are now throughout your career.
Yeah, so Jack, I gave you like 3 or 4. I have like, I don't know, 9 or 10 deals right now for the season, for the upcoming season. I just wanted to give people an idea of what I'm doing now. It's just from a radio and television standpoint. But my career is a little bit different from most because I didn't know what I was going to go to law school. My late father was an attorney. He was actually a builder. Your father, you grew up with our family, so he knows kind of what that's about. But I didn't want to be a builder. I didn't have the patience for law school. As much as I know about the law, and I've had to unfortunately learn about it over the years with chasing certain cases, that was not what I wanted to do. I grew up wanting to be a play-by-play voice. One thing I could actually say here, where I don't think I've announced this yet, but I might as well do it here. I'm returning as a play-by-play voice for the American Flag Football League, which will be on CBS Network. I won't be on CBS Network. They have their own announcer. I think it's going to be Dave Ryan. But I will be the voice for when we do games in Houston for YouTube, Twitter, IG, anything that's what you could watch. They have access to. I'll be on it. So I look forward to doing that. That's something, Jack, I did not do. The last time I'd done play-by-play was probably high school, although I would, in my early 20s, when I thought I would be doing that, I would watch like the Bulls Sun series in '93. I would turn the sound down. I'd start doing my own play-by-play. I thought that's what I was going to do. And I didn't think I'd become a reporter, because you asked about kind of how I got here. What I had, and this is really important, I want to talk less about myself. I want to apply it to all you guys listening and watching. What you have to have is a passion for something. You'll never make it. I don't care how intellectually smart you are. You've got no chance to make it in the media business unless you're passionate. That, to me, is the number one factor for making it in the media business. Whether you're doing radio, TV, whether you cover the NFL, MLB, NBA, soccer, whatever is it that you want to do with your career or your life, you must have a passion for it. I had a passion, Jack, growing up in the Philadelphia area, for information. I want to know why the Eagles drafted that player. Why did they cut that player? Why did they get it right? Why did they get it wrong? I was not really getting that information because I grew up in the pre-internet age, and where you guys have access to great information right now with the internet and television and radio and obviously your phones or your device, I didn't have that growing up in the 80s before you guys were born. So I wanted to go get it. I just didn't know how to get there. In the early 90s and my early mid 20s, I was done with school. My parents wanted me to earn a living. I was not getting a media job yet, so I had to go into sales. I didn't know what that guy was going to do. So what I would tell you is, if a schlep like me can make it, in their career, go to ESPN. We'll get into that and be nationally known. Anyone can if you work your ass off like I did. Excuse my language, but that's what I did. I'm known as a grinder. I've always had, even when I was at ESPN, I was allowed to do some things, not a lot outside my job, but I'm always trying to earn a living. My wife and I don't have any kids, but we try to save as much as we can. And what I would tell you folks, with the volatility of the media business, which was not like this when I first started, save your money. And the other thing, Jack, is, and a lot of your viewers and listeners know this, the more you can do. I was told that by Jay Glazer, a friend of mine. Very, you guys know Jay Glazer from Fox. He told me that in the early 2000s when I started covering the NFL. And I learned that from mentors in the media business that I'd meet along the way in the early, like the mid 90s when I first started. The more you can do, the more versatility you could have. You got to be able to speak. You got to be able to write. You got to be able to edit. Anything you can do. I became an editor 1999, 2000 for a company called fanball.com, Jack. I never thought I'd be doing that, but I did it because I don't say no. I rarely say no to anything. If I think it's something I can do and I think the money's fair, I do it. And that's, try to be open, folks, as you get older. At Syracuse with their internship program, I was an intern in when I was 18 and 19. It was, let me see. It was Channel 3 in Philly, which is now CBS. It was NBC when I was doing it. I worked for Howard Eskin. And then 35 years later, I worked for his son, Spike, who just got named as the program director for WFAN in New York. It's a small world. But I was willing to work for free as a kid. I didn't care. I just wanted to do it. Go get an internship. Maybe, Jack, you can explain what the internship program was like at your school. I just remember when I was at Ohio U in 84 and 85, I was doing it. I just wanted to learn. I never say no to learning. I sought out mentors. We could get into mentorship, which is very important to me in my career in mentoring young kids and even people in their 30s who reach out for help. I never say no. I can't guarantee I'll watch your tape, but I'll take your call. And you want to run stuff by me? Run stuff by me. What do I think? Because I've been through it, man. I've been laid off twice in 25 years. I was laid off publicly by ESPN. I mean, I had announced it, which was, kind of weird. I did it before the media reporters could put it out. So I've been through it all. I've never been fired, but I've been laid off twice. And I could, Jack, if you want to talk about what that means, we could talk about that. But just to get started here, you got to be versatile. Try not to say no, get an internship, and get mentors. That is the key to success in my career. I never would have had this where I got to at ESPN, and we'll get into how I got there because I know that's on the agenda you want me to talk about. I never would have gotten there without mentors who were willing to tell me, tough love sometimes. Sometimes they would tell me things I didn't want to hear about my performance. When and another term that I will live by the rest of my life, and I have pretty much all of it, and I got this sort of from my father, is be your own worst critic. No one, absolutely no one, could criticize myself more than I can. I as much as I hate watching myself on television, I love doing it, but I don't like watching myself because I'm so critical. I'm less critical now because I know it. When I do TV, I'm worrying about my performance because I'm computing what I'm doing. But you have to be self-critical. If you're not self-critical, you'll never get there. I never would have gotten to ESPN and been on Sirius XM for 18 years and all the other stuff I've been doing. Never could do it without being self-critical.
Yeah, so I mean, you got to ESPN, you got to Sirius XM where you are now. Can you tell us a little bit about before then and how you kind of built your career up to getting there? I know that this job did not come straight out of college. So can you talk about that time with college?
So yeah, I was saying, my early 20s, my parents pretty much kicked me out of their house in Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania. And I went into sales. I didn't know what I was going to do because I couldn't find an opportunity. Oh, so actually I didn't talk about this. This is Jack, why you have to say yes to stuff. My nephew, Sam Caplan, was in high school, 1995 or 96. He calls me and goes, "Hey, I know you can write. You wrote in school and all this stuff. Do you want to write for me?" I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm starting a fantasy football newsletter." I'm like, "I don't know fantasy that well." Okay. I mean, I play in a league. Sam and I were in a keeper league. That's, for those of you who don't know, that's when you keep a certain amount of players from year to year. And Sam was one of the first. He had one of the first paid newsletters on the internet. He was a fantasy expert before Matthew Berry was, who I've known since, by the way, since 2000, I think. Matthew Berry and I interviewed at ESPN the same day in 2007. He interviewed for a job on the fantasy side. I interviewed as a reporter on the NFL side, and I probably would have gotten the job had I had an agent. I didn't know you needed one. I was very naive. That's another story for another time. But so what I did was in 96 or 95, when Sam called me, I was like, all right, I'll do it. The pay was not very good, but it was a job, and it got me writing again. And I look, Sam kind of he was one of the first 2 or 3 paid newsletters on the internet for fantasy football, and he had a good subscriber base, and he made me an editor, and the money was okay, it wasn't great, but it was a job. So Jack, what I was willing to do was say yes. Don't worry about the money. I need to hustle. I'm a real hustler. What that means in the media business is you take on a lot of work. I'm someone who can do 6 things at once. I just have the ability to do it. It's not what I was planning on doing early in my life or in my media career, but to make money, I took on a lot of extra work, and I'm pretty good at handling that. Didn't know I could do that in the beginning, but you kind of learn over time to structure yourself a certain way and have a very regimented day. I have a planner here, folks. See this? There's not a day in my life that I don't have a planner, or I write down stuff. Okay, here's my 10 things I must get done today. And then what I do is, at the end of the day, if there are a couple things that didn't get done, I ask myself, why didn't this get done today? What happened? Was I taking too many phone calls? Was I making too many phone calls? Because these phone calls lasted for the next day. And I look at my day, and being my own harshest critic, I try to improve the next day. Something I've always done, probably got from my father, just trying to look at myself first, but before I look at anything else, and just try to figure out why something didn't happen that should have happened. And that's how you get better, be self-critical. So to keep moving along here, Sam's newsletter did really well. And remember, I had the thirst for information. Sam's company got acquired by a company called fanball.com out of Minnesota. He brought me along as their news editor. I was absolutely positively one of the first bloggers on the internet. I was their editor. You see, I came up with the structure of, more or less, I know RotoWire did the same thing, but I might have done it first. I can't confirm that I did, but it would go like, here's what Jack Adler, like, I'm just making something up here. Jack Adler, the head coach of the Pittsburgh Pisces. That was a inside joke from a movie called Fish to Save Pittsburgh with Dr. J from the 70s. But anyway, let's say Jack was a head coach of a team. I got his quote, and then what I would do is I'd put the analysis colon, I just analyze it, what he would say. And I did that for 2 years before they were part of the internet boom and bust, where their job was to, as a company, they got all this venture capital money. They spent like crazy. And then it went bust in 2001. And I lost that job, but I walked into several jobs, and I went to foxsports.com. What's not in my bio, I didn't send you very much of my bio, but I became a partner in a company called Pro Football News and Injury Report. I changed the name because I thought it was too long, to footballinjuries.com. We were the voice of injuries in the around the National Football League. We had over half the league subscribing to our service because we got injury information before it would get out. And I became one of the top injury insiders in the country. And Jack, so to answer, how did I get here? My first break, I did a Sunday night segment with Jack Arute on ESPN radio doing injuries, post-game injuries. And my career would take off. I was a partner in footballinjuries.com with Jay Glazer and another guy named Steve Cohen. We'd eventually sell the company to John Hansen, who does the fantasy show with me on Sirius XM. His company was Fantasy Guru. Now it's called Fantasy Points. But anyway, Jack, so how did I get here? It was just a series of jobs. You move up, you prove yourself, you improve. You're not going to be perfect. Some years I put out 500 scoops, breaking news stories when I was at ESPN. 2 or 3 might not be right, or I need to improve and figure out why I didn't get it right. But generally, when you get to that level at ESPN, you get there because you're good at your job. I didn't get there because I was bad at it. So and we could talk about how I got there. But Jack, over a series of years, it was just that people would know who I was and they would come to me. I mostly worked without an agent because I didn't know I needed one. I was very naive in the media business. A friend of mine, Solomon Wilcots, who used to work for NFL Network and Sirius XM, he and I worked there together. He couldn't believe I didn't have an agent at ESPN. He's like, "How can you not negotiate with an agent at ESPN?" I'm like, "I didn't know. No one told me." I was a little bit naive, so I lost that job in 07 when Matthew Barry got hired on the fantasy side. I would have worked with Chris Mortensen, who became a mentor of mine when we worked together at ESPN. Love the guy. He's really an inspiration for my career. But I would get to ESPN in 2013. We can get to that in a couple minutes. But it was just one, Jack, to answer your question, it was just getting better, doing radio and TV, also working locally for Comcast Sportsnet, which is now called NBC Sports Philly. It's CSN Philly is what it was called. I worked there since I was a paid contributor on and off from 97 through the fall of 13. When I went to ESPN, we had an agreement that I would be able to finish up every media deal that I had until I signed a full-time contract. And once I did agree to a full-time contract, I told them that I wouldn't sign it until they let me finish the season out. So that way I'd be able to get 2 paychecks and not have to quit 2 jobs in the middle of them, which is not fair to the companies I work for. So that is how I got to ESPN at 13, just because I was nationally known. But the way that I got there was very interesting, which we like totally not expecting the way it went down.
So speaking about ESPN, you've worked for many other media companies since then and before that and prior. Can you compare them, just the way that obviously ESPN is the number one company that comes to mind in many heads. So can you tell us what it's like working at ESPN compared to the other places that you've worked?
The best job I ever had, not even close. And it's not a shot at any other company that I work for. I got to tell you, the camaraderie between Schefter and myself, Mort, Dan Graziano, Field Yates, so he's more fantasy guy there than NFL, but Susie Kolber, Wendy Nix, then all the ex-GMs, and I apologize if I'm missing someone I work with, in terms from our insider group, Josine Anderson, who was also part of it, who I always enjoyed working with. But from the NFL ex-GM group, Phil Savage, who I absolutely love, Mark Dominic, who's a good friend, Marty Herney, who's back in the NFL now, was back to the Panthers, now he's in Washington. Bill Devaney, who was with his former GM in the NFL. Bill Polian, of course. Oh my God, I love that guy. What a treat to work with a Hall of Fame general manager. Just, this is like a dream, Jack. Like, you couldn't make it up. A schlep like me getting a job there. I never even thought of working for ESPN. I got to tell you, it was never a goal of mine. I don't know if I should say that, but I'm telling you the truth here. I never even thought of it. But the way I got there, you wouldn't believe it. We could certainly get into that. It was not expecting it. It hit me out of it just completely out of the blue. I happened to be at the right place at the right time, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and you wanted to be play-by-play when you were younger, right?
Yeah, I thought, yeah, and I wanted to be a reporter, but I never thought of going to the biggest media outlet in the world. I just never thought of that, and I blew my chance in 07 without when I didn't have an agent. Now, I'd only been reporting, quite frankly, for 6 years, like 5 or 6 years when I interviewed with ESPN. A couple of people went to bat for me. I have the ability to get along with everyone. That probably is why people like working with me. I think that's something that I've known. Doesn't mean I like all of them, but I get along with everyone. That's my reputation. I don't burn bridges. Now, even if you have, Jack, and this goes for all the ladies and guys watching, or any professors or anyone who's watching, you don't have to agree on everything. It's okay to have debate. There's nothing wrong with it, but never burn a bridge. Even if you don't like somebody, don't let them know it. Keep it to yourself, and don't gossip if you can. I know the media business is the worst for gossiping. It's terrible. That's a little bit of a different take on it, but there's a lot of that going on, and sometimes it comes to my desk. Unfortunately, people throw stuff at me, but be open. Again, try to help people if you can, because some of you watching are going to be very successful in your career. Hopefully all of you will. Some of you will be super successful. and help your friends out when they need it. Be a good listener. That's something I pride myself on. A lot of my, not a lot, but I would say some friends go to me for advice and I go to them for advice. Because sometimes as human beings, we don't see everything. Every once in a while I go, man, did I not see that, of something that I should have seen? We're all human. You're not going to always get it right about what you're doing, but be a good listener. Also have the right mentors. Not everybody knows the right thing for you to do. And over time, you will learn as you get old, because you guys are in your 20s, early 20s. I had no clue what I want to do with my life. I didn't know. I was very immature. We all grow up at some time. That Jack, as you know, growing up in the Delaware Valley, certainly a different lifestyle for those of you people grew up in Philly or the suburbs. And as you get older, you start getting wiser. And that's probably what I learned. I learned a lot from my mistakes that I made in my early to mid 20s.
Yeah, and I mean, you spoke a lot about relationships that you were able to build at ESPN.
Yeah.
Obviously, as an NFL reporter, a lot of the value that you provide is being able to get out the information first.
Yeah.
And the people that you were competing with to actually get that information out were a lot of your colleagues. So can you talk a little bit about the relationships that you were able to build and maybe some of the competition that would go down as a reporter for ESPN?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So I might as well get to it. How I got to ESPN. This story is hilarious. So spring of 2013, I'm at the NFL's owner meetings in Phoenix at the Biltmore, which it seems to be like every other year in Phoenix. So Adam Schefter comes up to me. I don't really know him very well. I mean, I didn't know him very well, just an acquaintance. We're competitors, like he and Ian Rappaport are now. Very, very strong competitors, let's put it that way. We always had a healthy respect for each other. I respect everyone who's in the media business. So he goes, hey, man, why don't you meet my boss, Seth Markman? I'm like, okay, cool. Didn't know what this was. I didn't know what was going to happen. So what happened next was Seth goes to me, hey, what are you up to? What are you doing? Are you able to do other things? Yeah, I said, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing this, that, and the other, but I manage my own career. I can do anything I want. He goes, hey, I've got this concept show called NFL Insiders. What do you think? And I go, first of all, Seth, I know exactly what it's going to be. And he goes, how do you know that? I'm like, I get it. It's going to be an ensemble show. I didn't know it would be 2, 3, or 4 people, probably 3 or 4 people. And we do scoops, we do analysis. He goes, you got it. But the part you don't know is we're not going to have players on it. It's going to be personnel guys and you guys, insiders, reporters, and personnel people. I'm like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I was like, this is great. This is like right down my alley. And I just was so shocked because Schefter and I didn't really know each other. He was the one who recommended me for the job. It was very nice of him. And when Seth said this to me, this is March of 13. Our first phone call that we had just to talk about the show was in late May of 13 after the draft. And I started working there as a paid contributor in July of 13 because we had to do a test show. And then I'll move this forward here because, obviously if you're a paid contributor there, you want to work there full time. So what a paid contributor means in television is you get paid per day. So I had a salary per day. And what happened was when you get to the campus, like you don't know where to go, right? So I worked at my boss's office, Seth Markman's office. I worked around the corner. And in September of 13, he sees me, Jack, and he goes, hey, come to my office and bring your playbook. And I'm like freaking out. I'm like, what? Am I that bad? Like he wants me to come to this office. But he was laughing though. He disarmed me. I'm like, I don't know what this is about. I just couldn't compute it because they only had 5 seconds to think about it. He goes, take a seat. And I'm like, I'm not saying I'm sweating, but I'm nervous. And he goes, just relax. I'm like, okay. I'm not someone who gets nervous. So this is rare for me. And I'm like, I don't know what he's talking. I don't know what he wants. So he goes, listen, how would you like to work here? I'm like, what do you mean by that? He goes, what do you think it means? I'm like, you mean full time? He goes, yeah. I'm like, I don't have an agent. He goes, go get one. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm out of my mind, Jack. I'm such a regimented, organized person. I'm like, what do I do? I don't have an agent. I screwed this up 6 years ago. What do I do? So I called a lot of people. And I met with Mike Tannenbaum, the former Jets and Dolphins, Jets GM and Dolphins personnel guy, who was who oversaw personnel there for the Dolphins. And Mike was representing media people. Mike's a friend. I I know Mike a little bit, and I talked to him, and I talked to 3 or 4 other guys that came down to Mike and somebody else. That the only reason why I didn't choose Mike, Jack, is because I knew he'd go back in the NFL, and he did. Nothing wrong with that. He went back to the Dolphins. After I talked to him, and anyway, so so I'll move this along. So you were talking about what happens when you compete for information with guys that you're working with, like Schefter and Moore, anyone else. Look, you try to be first. Now, I worked on plenty of stories with them, where we would say, hey, I'd say, hey, I'm working on this. I might need a little help, or you know what? We may know the same people. Let's just work on this together, whatever the case may be. And that's the way you would do it. Now, outside of ESPN, when I was there, in terms of competing against other people, look, I rarely lost when I was going to get a scoop. I had the things on lockdown. I knew who I was dealing with. I knew the agent, the contract negotiator, the general manager, the player, whoever my source was. It could have been 10 different sources from every team. Who knows? I felt I had on lockdown. Rarely did I lose. But look, you don't know who you're up against. It's a great question you asked. You just don't know. When I lost, it's because I didn't have it nailed down, and I will not report something that I just don't know it's true. I'm not looking to be first. I'm looking to be right. That's more important. Unfortunately, in the media business, not everyone plays by the same rules. Some people would rather just be first and not be right. I'm talking about guys I didn't work with. There's just some people who just don't do it the right way. But hey, that's life, But today, I'll do scoops every once in a while, but if I have them when I do my Eagle show with my partner Jeff Mosher, when we do shows, I rarely put Eagle stuff on Twitter. I'd save it unless it's breaking for our show, because as I learned early on, if you put everything out on Twitter, why would they watch you on television? Or why would they listen to you on the radio? If you're giving it all out for free, why would they watch? Mm-hmm. And that is what is absolutely lost in the media business right now. It's a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, all the news is coming out literally the second that it hits Twitter. It's fun. And I mean, I'm curious, just because obviously not having that behind the scenes look at what goes on in the reporter industry, are there specific contacts on each team that kind of not leaks but shares this information with specific reporters that they have the best relationship with?
Yes. They're definitely, I can't speak for anyone else who does what I do, but I can say with me, there's certain people who only talk to me. Either they don't trust these other people, or it could be someone on the business side, Jack, for an NFL team. I happen to know a lot of people work on the business side for teams. It's a long story. I just happen to know some guy. I'm not saying every team I know that someone on the business side, but I happen to meet them at an event, or someone put me in touch, whatever the case may be. Yeah, they might only deal with me, and there's some people I can't get a hold of because they only talk to certain reporters. Okay, that's fine. That's just par for the course. You got to live with it. But you know what? That doesn't stop you. Find another source. I don't take defeat just because you won't talk to me. I'll go to somebody else. That's just, look, you're not going to stop me from doing my job. It's just, I've been threatened before. There's a running joke in the reporter business. You're not anything if you've never been threatened. That's just part of the I call it the high leverage situations which we go through as reporters. When you're one of 10 people who are the only people who really do what you do in the country, not everybody's going to like you for whatever reason. I get along with everyone, or they just they don't know you. They don't, if they don't know you, they don't trust you. That's just the way it is. Okay, I got it, but I'll get it from somebody else. It's not a big deal. I don't worry about that.
Got it. So, I mean, first off, it sounds like just like a cutthroat industry.
It is. Oh,
I'm sure
they badmouth people, badmouth each other.
But so after talking about how it's a cutthroat industry, for some reason, it's a very highly sought after industry for many kids coming out of school. So to talk directly to those students who have a desire to get into the industry you're in, obviously you did not take the normal career path out of college to get to where you are. But if you were to go back in time, what would you say, or just looking back, if you were to go to the age that these students are at right now, looking to get into your industry, what would you say would be the best career path?
internship, number one, you got to get an internship unless you could get a job out of school. I didn't talk about this. I'm so glad you asked this. Be willing to move. Okay. Be willing to move. I turned down a very high paying job because I didn't want to move to California. Their high tax structure, trying to find, I got offered a pretty good job back in, before I went to Fox. So I went to Fox in 2010. I was offered a pretty good job in 08, and I couldn't do it because I figured after taxes and trying to find housing, probably would have lost half of my salary, if not more than that. That would have made it worth not moving out there. So, but what would I do if I was done with school here, 21, 22, 23 years old? Be willing to move, get an internship if you don't have a job lined up correctly, or I mean, immediately. Save your money, find mentors. That was, again, I didn't know a lot of the stuff. I was very naive. I didn't have the same advantage as you guys have. Take advantage of everything, take responsibility. There's another thing I'm really good at, which I wasn't good in my early to mid 20s. I had some good mentors. Do not point the finger at anyone. Take the blame. Not just for mistakes. Don't start, like, if someone gets a job and you didn't, figure out why you didn't get it. Don't hold animosity towards someone because you didn't get the job. Find out why you didn't get it. Now, if you find out that there was a reason why you didn't get it, but you don't think it was legitimate based on what you were told, then live with it and just go, hey, listen, I was qualified for the job. I just didn't get it. Someone else got it. Okay. But if they picked someone over you because they thought they read all your reporting and it wasn't good enough, or you're real for if you're in the communications field, if you put a reel together, for those of you who don't know, could be a 10-minute tape of your media clips of you doing on camera work, right? I haven't done a reel ever. I've never needed to, but if I needed to do one, I could get one. I could just go grab. I have it in my computer. I could do it if I wanted to, but it's always good to have a reel, because what'll happen is, if a network is not familiar with their work, and they don't give them YouTube stuff unless it's edited and it's clean and makes you look good. Because the worst is when kids send in bad tape of them, because it's the only tape they get. I would, in that case, I would go do something short. I would go do something off of Zoom, or you could use YouTube, of you doing something that's recent and current, where you think it's really good work. Turn your best work in, because I have some stuff out there that I know had been seen by a job that I interviewed with, and a friend of mine said, you better do it over. This is not very good. I'm like, okay, got it. And I'll do it. I'll do something else. And I did. I returned in some video stuff, which my friend happened to see, who was working for a network. So you gotta be smart about it. And again, it goes along the line of what I said earlier, being your own worst critic. That has really helped me get to where I've been. And the mentor thing is really big for me. One of my closest friends is actually a former Syracuse, actually graduated from Syracuse. I think Jerry Madelon, who's the top media performance coach in the world, who's a consultant for NFL teams and NFL Network. It's one of my closest friends. He's been a mentor for me and me for him. And he was my coach at ESPN. He was very hard on me. Be coachable. It's another thing, Jack. Be coachable. I'm so glad you asked me these questions. The reason why I improved and he stopped working with me after 6 months is because, as he said to me when he let me go, he goes, you know what? You don't need me anymore. You're where you need to be. I sure as hell wasn't when he first started. He crushed me very hard, and I took it like a man. I cringed when he pointed out everything on my tape. I'm like, man, because I didn't know how to grade tape like I do now. I actually do some media coaching on the side with him. I didn't know, Jack, that there's certain things you have to do. If you don't know which camera to look at, don't just assume the camera will find you. Ask them which is your camera. Well, is the camera 1, 2, 3, depending on how many cameras is on that shot. There's certain things I didn't know, because I didn't know television that well. I'd been on television since '97. When I got to ESPN, there's certain things I didn't know. Drop your notes. Like, I was a big note taker, and I go on Sports Center. like say it was my scoop, right? I'd have like 1 page of notes, and Jerry would say, "Why do you have notes? It's your story. You should know it by heart." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. All right, done." Notes were a crutch for me because I was so scared to lose my place. But I don't use notes. I haven't used notes in 8 years. When I write notes during the day and I read off them, I rehearse when I do sports grid, but I don't use them. I don't need them because I'm the one who's getting, I do the research, I get the information, so I should know it by heart. But that's the thing. As a kid, I wouldn't have known that. I didn't know this stuff. That's why I said you guys have better at, if like Jack and I doing this tonight, there was nothing like this when I was your age. There was nothing. Unless you do an internship and ask questions. That's another thing I failed to mention. Ask questions. Don't be bashful. Don't be scared to ask questions. When you do an internship, if you're doing a radio station, ask the program director, whoever you work for. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And if they're a jerk about it, you got the wrong job. There should never be an issue for you asking questions. You're in the learning phase of your life and career. I didn't know what I didn't know, which was a lot. When I started even at ESPN at an advanced age, there was so much I didn't know about television. I thought I knew, but I didn't know. And I would learn, Jack, as we would go along here, just to finish this subject off, I would learn from listening and asking the right questions, and then learning, who the smart people were at ESPN. What should I be doing every day? I had a supervisor, Mike Cambereri, Camby is his nickname, who was very instrumental in terms of shielding me from 87 interviews. On ESPN radio, they would always ask me to do interviews. I didn't know I could say no, because when I'm trying to make calls to get information for NFL Insiders or Sports Center, that's my job. My job is not really to do interviews, but you want to do the right thing by the company and to do these interviews. But I was told, hey, listen, that's your job to make calls. You could do the interviews later. I'm like, hey, great. So you definitely need someone looking out for you, and that is very helpful. Wherever you are, if you're at the school radio station, if there's a program director, ask the right questions. If there's someone there who's on your level, but you could be a friend of yours or you trust. If you don't understand something, ask. If you want to learn, ask it. I still, being in this media business for 25 years, there's not a day that I don't ask a question, because I don't have all the answers. I always be on the search for knowledge. That is the number one reason I became a reporter. I don't say it's the only reason, Jack. It's the number one reason. A thirst for knowledge. I can never know enough, and that is the story of my life and my career.
And I guess just back to the original question with the best career path now,
yeah.
As technology has evolved way further as to when you were leaving college to go on the job search. I mean, there are so many different opportunities to get yourself out there.
Yeah.
Whether it's, recording the game and commentating over it on TikTok, YouTube, and
turn the sound down. Yeah.
There's so many creative ways that you did it, but you weren't able to publicize it and have it out to the whole world on the internet. But now, I mean, there's so many ways to get yourself out there, and people are utilizing it. So at this stage, I guess if you're not there and working hard on that yet, like those relationships will help you get there.
Yeah. One thing I would add, Jack, is that, and this goes on what you were asking before and then finishing this off, podcasting, which I've been a podcaster. Technically, it wasn't called that before you guys. It was around when you guys were born, some of you in the late 90s, early 2000s. I did what's called real audio. I don't even think it's around anymore. I did my nephew Sam, who I talked about earlier, who later became an MMA promoter for Bellator, by the way. He was their guy who would sign the fighters, book the matches. Sam and I did a fantasy football show on real audio, and my job was to stream it. The two of us, I was the only one who was technical, so I would stream it. This is when internet strength was not very good, Jack, and it would crash. Like podcasting now, you could get it up within 10 minutes. It would take me 4 to 5 hours, okay? But now you got a podcast. It doesn't cost you anything. You could download the software for free. Another thing I want to add to this is try to be an expert. Learn, ask questions. The more you know, the better off you're going to be as your career grows, because if you're a sideline reporter, if you're a play-by-play voice, if you're a reporter, if you're an SID, if you want to be an SID after you're done school, whatever you do, you got to know what you're talking about. And whether you're a broadcaster, if you're a broadcaster doing a podcast, you should be an expert. If you're a fantasy expert, right? Like Matthew Berry, or you're a reporter like myself, I'm always gathering information. So that goes along what you're asking, like what kids should do when they're done school. You should, if you haven't got your internship yet, or if you haven't got your entry-level job, start your own podcast with your friends. Don't do it with 10 people, though. Do it with 2 or 3 of you. Or if you really think your information's good, let's say your favorite team's the Knicks, let's say from New York, right? If you really do believe you know the Knicks, do your own show. Or I don't like doing shows alone. I like doing with one other person. I like bouncing ideas off. I want to know what you think. I'll respond to it. You ask me a question. That kind of stuff. So the key to it, guys, is to be an expert. You should never not know something if you're put in charge of something. If when I do an interview, I do probably between radio shows, my own shows, and everything I do 15 to 20 hits a week, whether it's my stuff or someone else's stuff, or I'm a guest or I'm getting paid to do it. I have to know everything. There's not a time when you're asking me a question I don't know something. It's just I could not know it. If I would never accept it that I didn't know something, I would I wouldn't be able to sleep the next day. I'd kill myself over it. I would be embarrassed if I didn't know something. If you ask me a question, I'm not going to make anything up. It's just rare for me not to know anything. Like people want to ask me about Aaron Rodgers. Well, I could tell you what's out there because nobody knows anything more than that. I mean, I could tell you where I think it's going, but I don't know for sure. But the fact of the matter is, Jack, there's never a time when you ask me a question, I won't have an answer.
It's funny because one of our questions from the students that we haven't gotten to yet was, where's Aaron Rodgers going? So maybe we can
Sure.
on that. But so a couple more things I wanted to get to before we get some questions from the students. Obviously, one of the ways that you've cemented yourself in the industry comes from your ability to communicate through many different mediums.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear, what would you say is your favorite medium, whether that be writing, speaking, video?
I love, not that I knew what Zoom was, but I never used it. I mean, I'd rather do, it's really funny. I struggle with Twitter. Like in a way, I wish it broke, but yet it built my career. It's like, I shouldn't say that. I mean, you wouldn't be talking now without Twitter because I broke so many stories on Twitter. I can't even count that high. So I should be pissed off at it, but I didn't become a reporter to do now. What is the allotment, 250 words or characters, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
What's my favorite? I guess radio, but I love TV, man. I missed so badly that show NFL Insiders I was on for 4.5 years on ESPN. That was the best show by far, and I'm jealous. I mean, I'm biased, but I don't care. It's the best studio show on television. It's not even close. If you're an NFL fan, and it's the most watched show, it was the most watched show by NFL people that I know of. They love that show because there was no BS, no yelling, no shouting. It's all information, less opinion and more information. And it just was a groundbreaking show. No one has ever duplicated it. I miss it. I miss television. I'm on TV every week with Sports Grid, but I miss being in studio. That is the thing I miss so badly. I was called a studio reporter. And I haven't been in studio. I can't remember. I don't know if I've been in studio since I left ESPN in 2017. I'm not sure, but I don't think I have been.
And what happened to the Insider show? Why did it get taken?
Because they could not staff the show because we all got laid off at the same time. I got laid off the week of the NFL draft in 2017. So almost everyone got laid off from the NFL executive, like the former NFL executives. Everyone but Bill Polian was laid off, so they couldn't staff the show anymore. So it had to go away. They just didn't have enough people. But what a great show! Oh my God, I would have watched the show if I wasn't on it. This show is a great concept. It's a shame that no one's doing it.
So one more question before we go into the student questions.
Sure.
If you had the chance to go back in time, what is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
What would I give my younger self? What would I do? Oh boy, it's hard to narrow that down, Jack. I would say that this is a little well, I mean, it's gonna be what you asked, but I wish I would have done play-by-play in my early 20s. I wish I would have been willing to move to like some small area and done play-by-play because I'm I'm now doing play-by-play in my career, and I'd be a lot better. I think I'm decent at it. I've got a lot of energy, but I'll never be as good as the best guys in the country. It's just not going to happen. I don't have enough experience. But I wish I would have stuck by my guns. I'm not saying I didn't want to be a reporter. I did, because I had a thirst for information. But I wish I would have done play-by-play in my 20s and been willing to move for 10, work for 15 grand or 20 grand. I just wasn't willing to do it, and that was a dumb mistake I made. I'm not happy. I wish I would have done that. Wish I would have done that for sure. That's a good question. I had not thought of that before, but that's something that, as you asked me, I was trying to compress that question, and that's the way I would answer it.
Good to know. I'm glad I got to hear the answer to that. I was curious. So let's go into some questions that we have from students.
Sure.
All these students are tuning into the show just because they want to learn more about sports business and try to get an edge on everyone else in the competitive sports business.
Oh, one more thing I want to add, which I didn't say. Learn, if you're going to cover the National Football League, whatever sport you cover, I should have mentioned this was a mistake. You want to learn contracts the best that you can. I'm a relative expert at contracts. I could analyze every NFL deal and tell you whether it's good or bad, or what the team was thinking, what the agent was thinking. NFL contracts are simple. NBA are more complex with all these damn rules with these contracts. But it took me a while, because I got to know a lot of contract negotiators and agents, obviously. But you definitely want to, if you're going to be a reporter, you got to understand contracts. It's very, very important. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I forgot to mention that.
No worries. So our first question from Sam Borg: how are you able to separate yourself from your peers in and after college?
Again, I started my career, my media career did not start until my late 20s, early 30s. Because I didn't know I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to get there, because I just didn't have any opportunities. But I never stopped working. I never stopped trying to gather information and learn and read. Now, because the internet, you could read everything and anything in an instant off of our devices. So what I did was, because I decided not to do play-by-play because I didn't really want to move. I'm not saying I had a great opportunity, but I could have done it. I really wanted to be a reporter first, but I still could have done it. I just didn't handle. I don't think I handled that situation right, because I didn't have any mentors. I didn't know. Nobody was telling me what to do, Jack. I wish I had someone to tell me what to do in my early 20s. I would have done it. My father was a builder. He built homes. So he didn't know anything about sports television or sports media or reporting. I was I'm the youngest of 4 boys. I was the only one who really liked sports for a lot. So it's not like that. I love my brothers to death, but they didn't know anything about sports. So I didn't have a mentor growing up. And that's why I mean, mentorship is really important to my life. And, you and I've got to know each other. I think your career is incredible. I couldn't even dream of doing what you're doing at 20 years old. I had no chance to do that stuff at 20. It's not just because of, the advantages that you have. It's because your hustle at 20 is unbelievable. The stuff that you're doing, I didn't know about the hustle part till a little bit later. And once I started getting out of my own way, is a phrase that my friend Jerry Mellon came up with. Once I started to understand that you got to open up your horizons a little bit, I couldn't be stopped after that. Then I started to say, okay, start doing a lot of different things. And once I got to my mid-20s, man, I was doing so many things. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I was willing to do. Absolutely. Once you get out of school, and even now, by the way, be willing to do a lot of different things. And I didn't know that when I was your age. I wish someone would have told me, and I would have done a lot better in my early 20s.
And would you say that to be able to have that hustle, you have to be doing something that you're passionate about?
Yes, that's what I said to start our talk tonight. As I started off with you half an hour, 45 minutes ago, I said, you cannot get anywhere in the sports media business without passion. You have zero chance. I don't care how talented you are. Talent could only take you so far. You must have a passion. I had a passion for information. If there are a couple of things you get out of our talk tonight, it's the passion for information. It's to never stop gathering it. That is why I became a reporter. In the 80s, growing up in Philly, in the late 70s, when your parents were born. I just felt like I didn't know a lot because I wasn't getting a lot. Yeah, there were only newspapers. There was no Comcast Sportsnet in the 80s and 70s. I just felt like I was not a good NFL fan, or I'm still a huge Sixers fan. I just felt like I was underserved, and I was going to get that information. I'm going to give you a little nugget too. As a former Eagles season ticket holder in the 80s and 90s, I would look up at the press box. I'm not lying. I said, I'm going to be up there someday. I don't know when it's going to be. I didn't think it would take that long, but I was right. Nothing was going to stop me. I'm just that way. I'm a super type A personality. Once I get something in my mind, I'm going to go get it, and you're not going to stop me. That is why I get kind of, I have great relationships. I make sure they're good. I'm relentless. Be relentless is another thing. I didn't know I had this in me until my mid-20s, and I got some of this from my late father. It's one of the gifts my father left my brothers and I, is to be passionate. And I could say that about my father. And your father, Jack, remembers my father. If there's one thing about my father, is very passionate. He was an attorney. He retired in his early to mid 50s, and I don't want to say it was a hobby. He decided to go back to law school because he's kind of like me. I have to be challenged, or I don't do very well. I need a challenge of the day. That's why I do. That is probably why, as we talk about this, I need like 20 things to do that day. I can't sit still. It's just the way I'm wired. I don't apologize for it. It's just the way that I am.
Well, that does lead perfectly into the next question, which I'm excited to hear the answer to myself, from Ben Alfano. What is the biggest or your favorite news that you have ever broken on the Eagles, or just
in the Eagles? I cover 32 teams, Ben, but the one
I'm going to tell you, or just in football in general.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you my first big scoop, and this is funny because I didn't know it was going to be a scoop, but I didn't intend it to be a scoop. So one of my media deals locally in Philly on it was called Daily News Live on Comcast Sportsnet. The host, Michael Barkan, another Syracuse grad, by the way, I'm pretty certain. Michael goes to me, okay, what do you think is going to happen with Terrell Owens? Terrell Owens broke his ankle, I think in November of 2004. I said he's going to play in the Super Bowl. And he goes, wait a minute, what? I said, he's going to play in the Super Bowl. I said this like in mid-November. Now, I had great sourcing on it. They didn't tell me they're going to ask me that. And I'm like, oh, God, why did I say that?
No one knew yet?
No, I knew. I had a great source, and I can't go into how I found out, but I had an impeccable source on it. But I was good. This is back when, okay, this is another thing about reporting, folks. So those of you who go to journalism school or you're doing radio or television, back then you could hold stories where I know there's no way I was going to get out scooped. I had an unbelievable, one of the best sources I ever had in my life. I just knew he was going to play in the Super Bowl. I didn't say how much he was going to play. And I said that back then, 16 years ago. I said to Barkan, or 17 years ago, I said to Michael, listen, I'm not saying he's going to play the whole game. I'm just telling you he's going to play. And I didn't think it was a big deal. Now, this is before texting. So what happened was a couple of people called me and said, hey, do you know they let off their broadcast? It was called Sports Night. It was their news show at 10 o'clock. And then in the morning, they let off with your scoop. I'm like, what scoop? The Terrell Owens scoop. I'm like, oh my God, is that what they did? They made a big deal about it. I'm like, oh, here we go. I just didn't think, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to hold that thing, and they put me on the spot. So I learned a valuable lesson. Ask them if you can. Not that it really matters, but in that case, I would have liked to know where he was going. I don't blame him at all. I mean, it was a fair question. I just didn't think he was going to ask me that question. And I was not prepared to put that scoop out because I wanted to wait. I wanted to wait till the end of the season, but oh well. That was my first major scoop, which I didn't think was going to be major.
What about the Bradford deal? Because I know you also.
Yeah, Schefter and I worked on that story together. This was one of the most unique stories because if you remember, Teddy Bridgewater got hurt, and the Eagles had tremendous leverage on that deal. I was working on another story that week, and then for another, this was 2016. I was working on another story on another team, and then I got wind that the Eagles were working on Bradford. They were working on trading Bradford to the Vikings. I'm like, okay, all right. I'm like, and I have to. It's funny because you asked me about Schefter, and I just remember calling him, just letting him know. I'm not giving any state secrets away, but I'm not going to go too deep into this. But I will tell you that I just remembered, just to make sure that we weren't overlapping on the story, and we both talked about it. He wound up technically breaking that one. But I just remember that I was working on that story, but the big one was after that one broke from Schefter was me putting out that Wentz was going to start, and we were told. I mean, I can't speak for him, but I was told a week before that there was zero chance he was going to be the starting quarterback for the Eagles. It was going to be Bradford, and then Chase Daniel was the number 2, and then I had great sourcing on it, and I just called the Eagles. I said, I'm just letting you guys know I'm going with this thing. And I won't go into what some people said to me, but I knew I had it right. There's no way I was going to be wrong. And I didn't believe it at first. That's why I got, I think, 3 sources on it. It's another story for another time about sourcing. But I don't go any major story like that unless it's coming from, the coach or the general manager or the agent. And even if it's the agent, sometimes I don't get it right. I just want to make sure I got it right.
Mhm.
And yeah, I got it right. Was not expecting that because that was not what I'd heard from my Eagle sources that he was going to be starting. But there was a reason for it. Chase Daniel wasn't good enough then. It's a good backup. And Carson Wentz, the Eagles took a chance based on what they'd seen. Remember, he had broken his ribs against the Buccaneers in the first preseason game.
Yep.
They warmed him up for the Colts' 3rd preseason game, and they thought he looked great. He's ready to go. I'm like, okay, there you go.
And look where it took us as Eagles fans.
Well, he was damn good
He was.
through until he got hurt. And then 17, 18, he was actually good coming back from the broken back and the ACL. But if you notice, his completion percentage went up almost 10%, but not a lot of downfield throws.
Not a lot of escaping the pocket either. But
Yep.
that also does, funny enough, lead really well into the next question. Also, talking about finding all these sources to make sure that your report is accurate. So Sam Holland, we'll let this be the last question. Also, so Sam Holland asked, "How have you seen the timeline and accuracy of news reporting change in the NFL world with the developments in social media and technology over the past decade?"
Well, in terms of, can you read that question again? I don't quite understand.
How have you seen the timelines and accuracy of news reporting change in the NFL world with the development in social media and technology over the past?
So okay. Now I don't know if this completely answers your question, Sam, but let's say I put out that what was one where I had to update it? Well, Twitter. One of the things I really like about Twitter is, unfortunately, sometimes people don't read the whole tweet; they just go for the headline. Let's say I break a story where a player gets a contract extension, but I don't have the numbers. I'll break it. Hey, Joe Smith just agreed to a contract extension from the Panthers or whatever team he plays for, right? What I can do is then retweet my tweet over it, and I just go update, colon. I can update it. But the problem is when you get it wrong initially, and I won't criticize any certain reporters which got stuff wrong or get some stuff wrong more than they should. Sometimes they don't update it correctly. Like sometimes you should just take an L. If you get something wrong, I got one story wrong at ESPN. I know exactly what it was, and I beat myself up over it. It was Tony Romo. The Jason Garrett went back and forth whether Romo was going to play against the Eagles, and for my Cowboys source, it was tremendous. I didn't follow up with him over a series of hours because I was told that Romo wasn't going to play. And then what happened was Garrett changed his mind and said Romo was going to play, and I wound up getting it wrong. So I learned a valuable lesson. Even triple check on a major story like that. So I had to update the story and take the L. It was embarrassing. I didn't sleep the next night. I take any reporter who cares about information is going to lose sleep. You're going to learn from it. If you guys are going to be reporters, you're play-by-play voice. If you make a mistake on a name, you hate it. It's embarrassing. That's why you should always make sure, no matter who you work for, get the pronunciations right of your name. Spelling. If you're writing a story, funny story. My first big scoop at ESPN, they spelled my name wrong, my last name wrong on the ticker. And someone sent it to me and said, "You better get this corrected." I was so humiliated. It's like, are you bleeping serious? And then I laughed it off. I mean, it's only my last name, but they spell it with a K. Most Caplans are with a K. I'm with a C. So I was like, come on, man. This is my first story. Did you really screw this up? But I laughed about it. I don't hold grudges. So, but look, the immediacy, it is really funny, folks. You'll notice this. Like, you can always tell where the story came from. Like, if 7 people put out contract information on a contract, it probably came from the agent. Clubs rarely give information out. Like, they'll confirm it, but their spin on contracts will be different. It's actually kind of comical. It's inside reporting stuff that only kind of we know as reporters. I can almost tell you on every scoop where it came from. It's just kind of comical. It's just something that you know being a reporter.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for your time. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to this episode 1 of season 2 of the SSBC Digital Series. And we will see all of you back next week for episode 2. Thank you again, Adam.
Jack, thanks for inviting me, and I hope I helped you guys out. And if you have any questions, I'm on Twitter at Caplan NFL, same on IG. And yeah, if you want to email me, I still correspond with kids from the broadcasting camp in Philly through email, and they ask me questions or they ask me how I would handle a situation. I'm more than happy to do it, but I'm always honest. Sometimes it's not what you want to hear. I'm always going to tell you the truth. That's why people like talking to me, because I don't sugarcoat anything. It's just the way that I am. But I'm always going to tell you what I think or what I see and how I would handle it. So I'm more than happy to help people.
Great. All right. Yeah. Anyone feel free to reach out to Adam if you want to talk or get some advice on how to break into the industry. Thank you again, Adam.